Number. The encounter. The grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers casting dancing shadows across marble floors. Elena Martinez adjusted her black evening dress nervously as she walked through the crowded hall. She was here as a catering assistant, not a guest, but the elegant surroundings made her feel like she had stepped into another world. At 23, Elena worked 2 jobs to support her younger brother's college education. Tonight's catering gig, at the Romano family mansion, would pay enough to cover next month's rent. She had heard whispers about the Romano family, their wealth, their power, their dangerous connections, but she needed the money too desperately to care about rumors. The party was in full swing. Men in expensive suits spoke in hushed tones, while women in designer gowns laughed softly, their jewelry glinting in the light. Elena moved carefully between the guests, refilling champagne glasses and collecting empty plates. She tried to remain invisible, just another face in the background. From the balcony overlooking the ballroom, Vincent Romano watched the festivities below. At 31, he commanded respect and fear in equal measure. His dark eyes missed nothing as they scanned the crowd of business partners, politicians, and carefully selected guests. Vincent had built his empire through calculated moves and unwavering control. Tonight was another strategic gathering disguised as a social event. That's when he saw her. Among the sea of familiar faces and hired help, one woman caught his attention. She moved with natural grace despite her obvious nervousness. Her dark hair was pulled back simply, and she wore minimal makeup. Yet she stood out to him more than any of the jeweled socialites in the room. There was something genuine about her. Something real in a world full of pretense. Vincent's lieutenant, Marcus, approached quietly. "The Colombo family representatives have arrived, boss. They're waiting in the study." "In a moment," Vincent replied, his eyes still following the young woman as she worked. He watched her bend down to pick up a dropped napkin for an elderly guest, saw the genuine smile she offered when thanked. Most people in his world smiled because they had to. Hers seemed natural. Elena felt eyes on her but attributed it to paranoia. She continued her work, grateful that the evening was going smoothly. The other catering staff had warned her about working for wealthy clients. They could be demanding, rude, or inappropriately forward. So far, everyone had been polite, if distant. As she reached for a tray of empty glasses, her heel caught on the edge of an oriental rug. The tray tilted dangerously, and several crystal glasses slid toward the edge. Elena managed to steady most of them, but one fell to the marble floor with a sharp crash that seemed to echo through the entire ballroom. The conversation stopped. Every eye in the room turned to her. Elena's face burned with embarrassment as she quickly knelt to gather the broken pieces, whispering apologies. The head caterer would probably deduct the cost of the glass from her pay, money she couldn't afford to lose. "Leave it," came a deep voice from above her. Elena looked up to see polished black shoes and the hem of an expensive suit. Her eyes traveled upward to find a tall man with dark hair and intense brown eyes looking down at her. The conversation around them had resumed, but she felt like they were alone in a bubble of silence. "I'm so sorry about the glass," she said, starting to gather the pieces again. "I'll pay for it." I said, "Leave it." His voice was firm but not unkind. He extended a hand to help her up. Elena hesitated for a moment before taking it. His grip was strong and steady as he pulled her to her feet effortlessly. Vincent found himself studying her face up close. She had striking green eyes that looked worried and apologetic. Her skin was smooth, olive-toned. And despite her obvious embarrassment, she held his gaze without cowering. Most people couldn't look him in the eye for more than a few seconds. "What's your name?" he asked, still holding her hand. "Elena," she replied automatically, then caught herself. "Elena Martinez. I work for Premier Catering." "Elena." He repeated her name like he was testing how it sounded. "You're not hurt?" She shook her head, suddenly very aware that this man commanded attention even when he wasn't trying. Other guests were stealing glances at them, and she noticed several men in dark suits positioned around the room watching their boss with alert expressions. "Good." Vincent released her hand slowly. "Someone will clean this up." He gestured briefly, and immediately, a staff member appeared with a dustpan and broom. Elena felt she should say something else. Thank him, perhaps. But before she could speak, an older man in an expensive suit approached them. Vincent. The meeting? Vincent's expression shifted subtly, becoming more guarded. Of course. He looked back at Elena. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Elena Martinez. As he walked away, Elena felt an odd sense of loss. She had never met anyone who commanded a room simply by existing in it. The way others deferred to him, the careful respect in their voices, the positioning of those men in suits. Everything suggested this was someone very important and probably very dangerous. Elena returned to work, but she found herself glancing toward the balcony where she had first noticed him watching. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of refilled drinks and cleared plates. She caught glimpses of him throughout the night, always surrounded by serious-looking men, always in deep conversation, always in control. As the party wound down and the catering staff began cleaning up, Elena helped load equipment into the van. The head caterer, Mrs. Chen, handed out pay envelopes to each worker. Good work tonight, Mrs. Chen said when she reached Elena. The host specifically asked that you be included in any future events here. Elena was surprised. He did? Apparently you made a good impression despite the broken glass. Mrs. Chen smiled. Consider yourself lucky. The Romano family doesn't usually notice the help. The Romano family. Elena felt a chill run down her spine as she remembered the whispered warnings she had heard about their reputation. Now she understood the security, the careful conversations, the deference everyone showed him. As the catering van pulled away from the mansion, Elena looked back at the imposing building. Warm light still glowed from several windows, and she wondered what kind of business meetings happened at midnight in houses like that. Part of her hoped she would work another event there, while another part warned her to stay away from dangerous men with dark eyes and gentle hands. Vincent stood at his office window, watching the catering van disappear down the tree-lined driveway. The meeting with the Colombo representatives had gone well, but his mind kept returning to green eyes and an embarrassed smile. In his world, genuine reactions were rare commodities. Marcus knocked and entered. The Colombos agreed to the shipping terms. The deal is set. Good. Vincent turned from the window. The catering company we used tonight, Premier Catering. I want their contact information. Marcus raised an eyebrow but made a note. Planning another event soon, boss? Vincent sat behind his desk, pulling a crystal tumbler and bottle of aged whiskey from a drawer. Perhaps. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid and took a slow sip. Perhaps. The night had been successful on multiple levels. But as Vincent reviewed contracts and planned his next moves, he found himself thinking about a young woman who apologized for breaking a glass and looked him in the eye without flinching. In his experience, that combination of humility and courage was dangerous, especially when it came wrapped in green eyes and an honest smile. Elena Martinez had no idea that her simple kindness and genuine nature had caught the attention of one of the city's most powerful men. She also had no idea that Vincent Romano was not a man who easily forgot faces or names. As she fell asleep in her small apartment that night, counting the evening's wages and planning how to stretch them until her next paycheck, Elena couldn't have imagined that her life was about to change forever. The game had begun, though only one player knew the rules. Number the invitation. 3 weeks passed before Elena heard from Premier Catering again. She had almost forgotten about the elegant party and the mysterious man who had helped her, focusing instead on her regular job at the downtown diner and picking up shifts wherever she could find them. Her brother Diego had called to thank her for covering his textbook costs, and that reminder of why she worked so hard helped push the strange encounter from her mind. Then Mrs. Chen called. Elena, are you available Saturday evening? We have a private dinner party, and the client specifically requested you. Elena's heart skipped. She knew without asking which client had made the request. At the Romano house? Yes. It's a smaller gathering this time. Maybe 20 guests. The pay is double your usual rate. Elena needed the money, but something about the situation felt dangerous. Still, double pay would cover her car repairs and leave enough for groceries. "I'll be there." Saturday arrived gray and drizzly. Elena chose her outfit carefully. Black slacks and a crisp white blouse. Professional, but not trying too hard. She pulled her hair back in a neat bun and applied light makeup, telling herself she was just being professional. The Romano mansion looked different in daylight, less intimidating but somehow more real. Elena could see the meticulous landscaping, the security cameras positioned discreetly around the grounds, and the way every detail spoke of wealth and control. This time she entered through the service entrance, where Mrs. Chen was already directing the setup. The dinner would be held in a smaller dining room that still managed to seat 20 people around a table that probably cost more than Elena made in a year. "The guest list is smaller tonight, Mrs. Chen explained as they arranged place settings. "Business associates mostly. Same rules apply. Be polite, stay professional, and don't engage in conversation unless spoken to directly." Elena nodded, but her hands were shaking slightly as she folded napkins. She kept expecting to see Vincent Romano appear, though she wasn't sure if she hoped he would or wouldn't. The guests began arriving at 7. Elena helped serve appetizers and wine, moving efficiently between the kitchen and dining room. The conversation was quieter tonight, more focused. These weren't party guests making small talk. These were serious business discussions about shipping schedules, territory boundaries, and financial arrangements. Elena was refilling water glasses when she heard his voice. "The Baltimore operation will be fully integrated by month's end." She looked up to find Vincent Romano seated at the head of the table, commanding the meeting with quiet authority. He wore a charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly, and his dark hair was styled but not overly formal. When his eyes met hers across the room, she nearly dropped the water pitcher. He didn't acknowledge her directly, but she felt his awareness of her presence like electricity in the air. Throughout the dinner service, she caught him glancing in her direction. Though he never interrupted his conversations or appeared distracted, Elena tried to focus on her work, but listening to the discussions made her increasingly uncomfortable. These weren't typical business deals being discussed. References to shipments, territory, and protection painted a picture she didn't want to see clearly. Near the end of dinner, while Elena was clearing dessert plates, one of the guests, a thin man with nervous eyes, began speaking more loudly than appropriate. "Vincent, you know I've been loyal, but my wife is asking questions about the late nights, the phone calls." "Lower your voice, Tony." Vincent's tone was calm, but carried an unmistakable warning. "I'm just saying maybe it's time I stepped back, focused on legitimate business." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elena found herself frozen near the sideboard, dirty plates in her hands, afraid to move and draw attention to herself. "We'll discuss this privately," Vincent said evenly, "after our guests leave." Tony nodded quickly, sweat beading on his forehead despite the comfortable temperature. The conversation moved to safer topics, but Elena noticed how the other guests avoided looking at Tony for the rest of the evening. As the dinner concluded and guests began leaving, Elena helped pack up the catering supplies. She was loading a box of glassware when Mrs. Chen approached her. "Elena, there's been a change of plans. Mr. Romano has asked that you stay to help serve coffee in his study. The other staff can finish the cleanup." Elena's stomach clenched. "Just me?" Mrs. Chen nodded, looking slightly puzzled herself. "He was very specific. Said he had some questions about the service tonight." Elena's mind raced. Had she made a mistake? Done something wrong? The conversation she had overheard suggested these were not people who tolerated errors lightly. She followed Mrs. Chen's directions to the study, carrying a silver coffee service on a mahogany tray. The room was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive desk that dominated one corner. Vincent Romano stood behind the desk, his back to her as he looked out the window. "Set it on the table by the fireplace," he said without turning around. Elena did as instructed, her hands steady despite her racing heart. She had learned long ago not to let nervousness show when dealing with difficult customers, though this felt different from any customer service situation she had experienced. "How do you take your coffee?" she asked, proud that her voice came out clear and professional. Now he turned to face her. In the softer lighting of the study, his features seemed less harsh than they had in the ballroom. Black, 2 sugars. She prepared his cup carefully and set it on a small side table near one of the leather chairs. "Will there be anything else?" San. Instead of answering, he gestured to the chair across from his. "Sit. I should get back to help with cleanup." "Sit," he repeated, and this time it wasn't a request. Elena perched on the edge of the chair, her back straight and hands folded in her lap. Vincent settled into his chair and picked up his coffee cup, studying her over the rim. "You're nervous." It wasn't a question. So Elena didn't respond immediately. When the silence stretched, she said, "Should I be?" A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "That depends on why you think I asked you to stay." "I assume I did something wrong, made a mistake during service." "Did you?" Elena reviewed the evening in her mind. "I don't think so." Reader Monning Mitting. "You didn't." He set down his cup and leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about yourself." Elena Martinez. This was not what she had expected. "I'm not sure what you want to know." She had bride. 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 Start with why you're working as catering help when you're clearly educated and intelligent. Heat rose in Elena's cheeks. "I need the money. I work at a diner during the day and take catering jobs when I can get them. My brother is in college, and..." She stopped herself. "He didn't need to know her financial struggles. And you support him." She nodded reluctantly. "What's he studying?" "Engineering. Mechanical engineering. He's very smart. Like his sister." Elena looked down at her hands. "I never went to college. Couldn't afford it. Education comes in many forms." Vincent leaned forward slightly. "You handled yourself well tonight during an uncomfortable conversation." Most people would have been visibly shaken. So he had noticed her reaction to the tense exchange with Tony. "I've worked in restaurants for years. You learn to stay calm when customers get upset." "Is that what you think you witnessed? An upset customer?" Elena met his eyes directly. "I think I witnessed a conversation I shouldn't have heard." Vincent studied her for a long moment. "You're right. The question is what you plan to do with what you heard." "Nothing." The word came out quickly. "Honestly. I need this job, Mr. Romano. I don't ask questions about clients' personal business." "Vincent." "I'm sorry? My name is Vincent. And I believe you." He stood and walked to the window again. "But the problem with trust is that it requires testing." Elena's mouth went dry. "What kind of testing?" He turned back to her, and his expression was serious. "I have a proposition for you. A job opportunity that would pay significantly more than catering work." "What kind of job?" "Personal assistant, social events, some administrative work, occasional travel. The pay would be enough to support both you and your brother comfortably." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "Why me?" "Because you're observant but discreet. Because you don't panic under pressure. And because you need the money enough to be motivated, but not desperate enough to be reckless." Elena felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff. The offer was tempting. More money than she had ever imagined making. Enough to give Diego the opportunities he deserved. Enough to stop worrying about every bill and expense. But accepting would mean entering a world she didn't understand and couldn't control. "What would be expected of me?" she asked carefully. "Loyalty, discretion, competence. The ability to follow instructions without questioning them. And if I prefer to stick with catering work?" Vincent's expression didn't change. But something shifted in the atmosphere. "Then, you'll continue to receive catering assignments through Premier Services. Missus Chen will ensure you're well taken care of." The message was clear. Accept the offer or lose even the catering opportunities. Elena felt trapped, but also oddly intrigued. Despite the obvious danger surrounding Vincent Romano, he had been nothing but respectful toward her. He could have simply ordered her to take the job, but instead he was offering her a choice. Even if it wasn't really much of a choice. I need time to think about it. Of course, take the weekend. I'll need an answer Monday evening. Elena stood, smoothing her black slacks. How do I reach you with my decision? Vincent pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. The card was simple. Just a name and phone number. No company or title. Call that number Monday at 8 p.m. Someone will answer. Elena tucked the card into her pocket. Thank you for the opportunity. Thing. 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 Elena, he said her name as she reached the door. Whatever you decide, remember that some doors only open once. She nodded and left the study, her mind spinning with questions and possibilities. As she gathered her purse from the kitchen and said goodbye to Mrs. Chen, Elena felt like she was walking in a dream. The drive home gave her time to think, but by the time she reached her small apartment, she was more confused than ever. Vincent Romano was dangerous. That much was clear from everything she had observed. But he was also intelligent, controlled, and oddly honorable in his own way. The job offer could change her life, but it could also destroy it. As Elena lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and thinking about dark eyes and impossible choices, she had no idea that several miles away, Vincent Romano was also awake, thinking about green eyes and the courage it took to look him in the eye without flinching. Monday was only 2 days away, and both of their lives hung in the balance of the decision she would make. The decision. Monday evening couldn't come soon enough, yet Elena wished it would never arrive. She had spent the weekend analyzing every aspect of Vincent's offer, trying to see all the angles and possible consequences. The rational part of her mind screamed warnings about getting involved with dangerous people, while another part whispered about opportunities and the chance to finally stop struggling financially. She had called Diego Sunday night, ostensibly to check on his studies, but really to remind herself why she was considering this risky path. His excitement about a research project and his gratitude for her support reinforced her determination to give him the best chance possible at a successful future. At exactly 8 p.m. Monday, Elena dialed the number from Vincent's business card. Her hands were steady, though her heart was racing. Elena, Vincent's voice answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting by the phone. I've made my decision, she said without preamble. And I accept your offer. There was a pause before he responded. Good. Can you start Wednesday? Yes. A car will pick you up at 9 a.m. Bring identification, and be prepared to spend the full day completing paperwork and orientation. Where should I meet the car? It will come to your apartment, 412 Oak Street, Unit 3B. Elena felt a chill that he knew her address, though she supposed she shouldn't be surprised. How did you? I'll see you Wednesday, Elena. The line went dead, leaving Elena staring at her phone and wondering what she had just committed herself to. Wednesday morning arrived gray and cold. Elena dressed carefully in her best business attire, a navy blue dress she had bought for job interviews and rarely had occasion to wear. She applied makeup with steady hands and pulled her hair back in a professional style, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. At exactly 9 a.m., a black sedan pulled up outside her building. The driver was a large man, in a dark suit, who nodded politely, but didn't speak as he held the door open for her. The car was immaculately clean and surprisingly comfortable, with tinted windows that made Elena feel hidden from the world outside. The drive took them through parts of the city Elena rarely visited, areas where the buildings were taller, the streets cleaner, and everything seemed to cost more than she could afford. They pulled into an underground garage beneath a sleek office building, and Elena followed her silent escort to a private elevator that required a keycard to operate. The elevator opened directly into an elegant office suite that managed to be both sophisticated and intimidating. The receptionist, a polished woman in her 40s, smiled warmly and directed Elena to a conference room where several official-looking documents waited on the table. Vincent appeared a few minutes later, looking every inch the successful businessman in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. In the professional setting, Elena could almost convince herself that her concerns about his business dealings had been overblown. "Good morning, Elena. I trust the drive was comfortable?" "Yes, thank you." She gestured to the stack of papers. "Employment documents? Among other things. Have a seat, and we'll go through everything together." The paperwork was extensive. Employment agreements, tax forms, confidentiality agreements, and several other documents Elena didn't immediately recognize. Vincent explained each form patiently, answering her questions without seeming irritated by her careful attention to details. The salary figure made Elena's eyes widen. It was more than double what she had optimistically hoped for, with health benefits, paid vacation, and performance bonuses. The confidentiality agreement was thorough, covering not just business dealings but personal information about Vincent and his associates. "This clause about discretion," Elena said, pointing to a particular section. "It needs to be. My business requires absolute trust and confidentiality. Can you commit to that?" Elena read the section again carefully. It essentially bound her to never discuss anything she saw, heard, or learned while working for Vincent, with severe financial and legal penalties for violations. "Yes." "Good." Vincent signed several documents and slid them across the table for her signature. "Your first assignment is Thursday evening. There's a charity gala downtown, and I need someone to accompany me who can handle social situations gracefully." "A date?" Elena asked, surprised. "A business arrangement. You'll be introduced as my personal assistant. Your job is to observe, remember faces and names, and help me navigate the social aspects of the evening. Many important business connections are made at events like these." Elena nodded, though she suspected the business being conducted at charity galas was not the kind that appeared on tax returns. "What should I wear?" "That's been arranged." Vincent stood and walked to a closet Elena hadn't noticed. He opened it to reveal several elegant dresses in different sizes. "Choose whichever fits and appeals to you. Accessories and shoes are available as well." Elena approached the closet with wonder. The dresses were beautiful and expensive, more than she would have spent on clothes in an entire year. She selected a midnight blue dress with elegant lines and subtle beading that caught the light. "Excellent choice. The car will pick you up at 7 tomorrow evening." Vincent returned to his desk and pulled out a thick, manila folder. "In the meantime, study these." The folder contained photographs and biographical information on dozens of people. Politicians, business leaders, socialites, and others Elena didn't recognize. Each photo had a name and brief background information attached. "You need to learn to recognize these faces," Vincent explained. "Know their names, their connections, their interests. Tomorrow night, you'll see many of them, and I need you to be able to identify them and remember who spoke with whom." Elena flipped through the pages, overwhelmed by the amount of information. "How long do I have to memorize all this?" 24 hours should be sufficient. You strike me as someone with a good memory." It was a challenge, but Elena had always been good at memorization. She spent the rest of the day studying the photographs until she could match names to faces and recall key details about each person's background and connections. Thursday evening, Elena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. The midnight blue dress fit perfectly, and the jewelry Vincent had provided was subtle, but clearly expensive. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, and her makeup was more sophisticated than she usually wore. She looked like she belonged in Vincent's world, at least on the surface. The charity gala was being held at the city's most prestigious hotel. Elena had never been inside the building, and the opulence was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors, and every detail spoke of luxury and exclusivity. Vincent appeared at her side as soon as they entered, offering his arm with old-fashioned courtesy. "Ready?" Elena nodded, though her stomach was full of butterflies. The evening became a carefully choreographed dance of introductions and small talk. Vincent moved through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing Elena as his personal assistant to various business associates and social connections. She recognized face after face from her studied photographs, remembering names and making mental notes about conversations. Mayor Davidson spoke with Vincent about upcoming city development projects. Senator Morrison's wife complimented Elena's dress and mentioned their recent trip to Italy. Judge Parker discussed changes to local business regulations. On the surface, it was all perfectly normal social interaction. But Elena began to notice patterns. Every conversation seemed to have layers of meaning. When Vincent discussed shipping schedules with a port authority official, Elena sensed they weren't talking about legitimate cargo. References to security consultations and insurance considerations carried implications that made her uncomfortable. Near the end of the evening, Elena excused herself to visit the restroom. As she was touching up her lipstick, she overheard two women discussing Vincent. "I heard the Romano family is expanding their operations into the waterfront district," one woman said quietly. "About time someone cleaned up that area." "Those docks have been a mess for years," the other replied. "Cleaned up or taken over?" Elena felt a chill as she realized these women were discussing Vincent's business activities with casual acceptance. Whatever he was involved in, it wasn't secret knowledge among the social elite. When she returned to the ballroom, Vincent was concluding a conversation with a man Elena recognized from her photographs as Thomas Benedetti, a construction company owner with rumored connections to organized crime. "Elena, perfect timing," Vincent said smoothly. Thomas was just leaving. Benedetti nodded politely to Elena before departing, but not before she caught the end of their conversation. "The concrete deliveries will arrive on schedule." As they drove home, Vincent was quiet, seeming to process the evening's interactions. Elena sat beside him, her mind racing with everything she had observed and heard. "You did well tonight," Vincent said finally. "Natural social skills, good memory for names and faces. Tomorrow we'll discuss what you observed." Elena nodded, but her thoughts were troubled. The evening had confirmed her suspicions about Vincent's business activities, while also showing her a world of wealth and influence she had never imagined accessing. The opportunity was intoxicating, but the moral implications were becoming harder to ignore. As the car pulled up to her apartment building, Vincent turned to face her. "Second thoughts?" Elena met his gaze directly. "Questions, which I may or may not answer. Am I working for a criminal organization?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "You're working for me, Elena. What I do to earn the money that pays your salary is my concern, not yours." It wasn't really an answer, but it wasn't a denial either. Elena nodded slowly. "And my job is to help you navigate social situations and remember details. Among other things, yes. What are the other things? We'll discuss them as they arise." Vincent's expression softened slightly. "Elena, I want you to understand something. I would never put you in a situation where you could be personally harmed or legally compromised. Your role is legitimate and legal. Beyond that, the less you know about certain aspects of my business, the safer you are." Elena wanted to ask more questions, but something in his tone suggested the conversation was over. "I understand. And, good, get some rest. Tomorrow we begin the real work." As Elena walked into her building, she felt like she was crossing a bridge with no way back. She had committed herself to Vincent's world, and while she didn't fully understand what that meant, she knew her life would never be the same. Upstairs in her apartment, she hung up the beautiful dress and carefully put away the expensive jewelry, wondering if she would ever feel comfortable wearing such luxury. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, sophisticated, confident, and slightly dangerous. Elena Martinez, the struggling catering assistant, was gone. In her place stood Elena Martinez, personal assistant to Vincent Romano. with all the opportunities and risks that position entailed. As she fell asleep that night, Elena's last thought was that she had stepped through a door that, as Vincent had warned, only opened once. Tomorrow would reveal whether she had made the best decision of her life or the worst mistake.